everybody. Happy Tuesday. It is the Football 360 show back with you again, coming at you live from the beautiful Football 360 studios. I am JP Rock. He is Matt Bierman. You can catch us here live on X, on YouTube as well. And, of course, all things Football 360, football360show.com. How you doing, Matt?
Doing great. Doing great. Just
everything's kind of on pause a little bit this week. This week we're in right now, but a lot of stuff going on. I know I was at Corey Sims made his announcement at CBC High School, which was a pretty big deal, really cool. Him going to CBC from CBC to USC, very cool.
Big.
Congratulations to him. Yep,
the last MCC
Huge.
player to go Pac-12 and USC was what? Trevor Trout.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems to be the place that a lot of guys like Jeremiah's in Oregon and Isaiah Mosey's at Oregon. A lot of guys heading out west. The West Coast must have something good to offer. So his reasons were really good. I know that you were down in Louisiana. I'm sure you got a lot of stuff to talk about.
I was in the epicenter of college football last week.
You were an adopted Manning son.
Yeah, there was not much else going on, I guess, in the football world, and that camp is a big deal, and there's the who's who is there, so we can get more into that.
It was
really fun,
pretty huge. A lot of St. Louis kids were down there.
It was and it's cool because they kind of like group those kids together. You know, there's other kids from different regions,
right?
But yeah, it's kind of fun to see. And then the older guys, I didn't get to see a ton of the older guys that we trained because they were on a different field than I was at, but certainly saw them throughout the weekend.
Saw a lot of photos from down there. Saw you and Braden with Brady and everybody down. A lot of young guys down there.
Yeah,
from like seventh grade up. So that was pretty cool. And congratulations to Wyatt Mueller from Quincy, Notre Dame. Or is he pronounced it Miller or Mueller? I always say
Mueller.
Yeah. Sometimes people with that spelling pronounce it Miller.
I've heard
you would know. Yeah.
I've seen it. I've butchered it before.
Right. Exactly. So congratulations to him going to Illinois State, announced his verbal commitment. A lot of commitments happening. We can talk a little bit about some of the guys and where they're going, but congratulations to him because it just seems like yesterday, and I tweeted this out, that it was over the wintertime. I remember him staying behind after training at Elite, and he wanted to talk to me about the whole recruiting process, and he wasn't really getting interest at the time. And so we had a good conversation about that, and I just kind of gave him my thoughts on it, and boom, lo and behold, it just kind of worked out the way that I told him and the way you told him. And it's funny how that happens.
Yeah, it is. And he's a guy that got hurt. I think broke a leg. One of those injuries that's a real pain that ultimately doesn't do a lot of like damage to anything. Like, it's just a real pain. You just gotta let it heal.
Yeah.
And you're really frustrated. But he really kicked it into overdrive this offseason and worked out. Came in, he's working on some quarterback stuff too, just because he's a team player and his team needs him.
Yes.
And he's just a really good athlete.
He's a great athlete. Yeah. And he could really play multiple positions on the next level. I haven't talked to him about where exactly the Redbirds see him. But and what's really fascinating about him and his story is he had the proper mindset, right? It's what we've talked about. He had the proper mindset. He came to you. He came to me. What do I have to do to get here to make this happen? I want to play, D1 college football. I want to play on the highest level I can. What do I have to do? How does that work out? And that's it's not everything, but it's a huge part of
huge component,
right? Of having that mindset and being willing to do what is necessary to get to that point. Because we see a lot of kids, unfortunately, who have better tools and God-given ability, and they just squander it.
So this happened not that long ago in my car. Was talking with a couple players, and a kid was asked why he hasn't been training, and his response was, well, if I played more, then I would train more. And I said to the two kids, I said, that'd be like saying, well, I want to, if I was a millionaire, I'd work, right?
Yeah.
Versus
I'd work harder if I was a millionaire.
How about you work to become a millionaire? Like you have to put the work before that expected outcome.
Yeah. If I got better looking women, I'd work more on my appearance.
Right. It's just it just makes no sense.
Right.
And so but I which is crazy to even that someone would think that. And it was a younger kid that said it, but But I think that that's a pretty pervasive attitude with a lot of kids. And I think that's what drives a lot of recruiting behaviors is like, well, I need this, I need that. And then the kids, when they get offered, they stop training and working. And then that's an easy way to tell that they were just kind of doing it for the wrong reasons. And unfortunately, being in college football, like it just doesn't go that way. You have to work harder, not less, not less. You got to work harder. It gets harder.
Step, which is why I do the whole keep building thing, because you can't be at this point and be like, okay, I've made it. No, man, you got to take that another step. You got to lay that another brick down, build what you're building higher. And it's unfortunate that some guys don't do that. He had the proper mindset. All these guys that you see, Corey Sims is another great example. Mm-hmm. Right? Corey was blessed with God-given abilities, but he's worked and trained, and you see it, and the stuff that he's done, and he keeps trying to better himself.
Yep.
And it pays off. So because if you have that God-given ability and you have the work ethic and the mindset, those are the most successful guys that you'll see.
So to touch on that, like if you watch like this past weekend at the Manning camp, so you had, I think, 49 of the top college quarterbacks. So there are a few FCS guys, by and large, the vast majority power 4 quarterbacks. SEC guys, some Big 10 guys, and you name it, Big 12 guys. So and certainly ACC. So watching them train and get into it and be there, you realize real quickly, like, hey, these guys are here not because they have to be there, right? They volunteer their time. They get flown down there. They're definitely volunteer coaches, but they're there to work. They're there to learn. They're there to get better.
And they're competitive. And doing that. Yeah.
And so, but what's pretty unique is like what'll happen is they have private workout sessions for the college guys. So, imagine being in Thibodaux, Louisiana. It's 90 degrees plus, 80% humidity. You're in a swamp. You're in the bayou, and the sun is it's intense there. So, they do their training of the kids. So they're out there, they're sweating their butts up like everybody else, and then they get done. It's 4:00, which is the hottest part of the day, and they go to the stadium on the turf, and now it's time to work. It's their time. So, watching those guys work with each other. And then they brought in the LSU receivers. They brought in guys from Nicholls State, which is the host school.
Yeah.
There's some guys, I think, from Southeast Louisiana there as well. So some high-level guys. And fun to watch those guys compete and then also be students and learn because, sure, a lot of them big-name guys, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Mizzou, all the big Florida. I mean, you name it. So there's a lot of dudes there that can spin the ball. And
some great athletes that can catch it.
That it's just fun. It was a lot of fun. So I will tell you, so pretty cool. So we go into the stadium, and there's not many. There's the evening before, everybody's there. Like it's a thing. It's like a paid event called Friday Night Lights, where all of them do it, and it's kind of like an exhibition, and then there's like a competition and kind of fun, and the whole town comes out, so it's packed, and it's a big stadium too. So. On the flip side, the next day, when they're working out, that's just kind of a private workout. But if you're a camper, you can certainly watch. And I would say maybe a couple hundred people are in there. Very few kids. Everybody's going to eat. Everybody's getting out of the sun. But I looked at my son and said, "Hey, I think we should stay and watch this. This is pretty cool." So, and I also wanted to film Brady, so he had video of what he was doing and all that. So. Which I think he's appreciative of because, it's nice when you're training, but then you also want to see what it looks like so you can evaluate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yourself. And he threw great. I mean, he was lights out, but to see the different levels, like those top, 20 guys, it was pretty interesting. And then that mid-level is pretty good. And then besides that, you have, there's a few small school guys. And there was a few of those guys that could rip it, but you can definitely see the difference. You could definitely see the difference in some of those, top ranked guys.
Yeah.
But there was numerous guys that stuck around the field after it was over and were still throwing and couldn't get enough. Right. And so those are the guys that, they're getting paid money. They're getting paid a lot of money right now to be in college playing football at their respective schools, but they're there on their own dime, essentially, in their own time.
And why do you think that is?
Because they understand that they have an opportunity ahead of them to be a top-ranked guy and have a shot, to win national championships, to win, to be competitors for their teams, and then help themselves to potentially go to the NFL.
Right. And a lot of those guys that you were sitting there watching in the heat, working hard, doing the X reps and stuff, you're going to see them next year when the draft time rolls around.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to see a lot of those guys called, and you're going to see a lot of those guys playing in the league in a few years.
So, cool thing that I saw, two things I want to touch on. One, the size of some of the quarterbacks is a little interesting because it's long gone are the days of there's definitely guys 6'2" to 6'4".
Right. Not seeing a lot of 6'5", 6'6" guys out here.
You're not seeing a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
But then the interesting thing is a lot of 5'9.5" to 5'11", right?
Yep.
And guys that could flat out spin it. Obviously, like Dylan Gabriel is probably 5'9" to 5'10", being gracious.
Right.
But he can spin it. I mean, absolutely. You can tell he's got great energy, but he can rip it. But yeah, so it was just interesting to see the different size in those guys because Arch Manning's a big kid. I mean, he's probably 6'4". Jalen Milroe's got good size to him, but not, he's not, you don't see the prototypical NFL guys. I think Miami's quarterback, Van Dyke, and then
not a lot of Roethlisberger,
not
John
a lot
Elway
of those guys. Not a lot of those big lumbering guys. A lot of lean, supple athletes that can throw the football. So pretty cool. I think the other thing that was pretty unique, and I had a great conversation with him, and now I'm a huge fan, is Charles Davis, who's the announcer, but he's also more affectionately known by all the kids there as the voice of Madden.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, did people love talking to him and interview. They want to get pictures with them. But he and I had a really good conversation. He's a former college football player. He usually works the camp, it sounds like. This year he wasn't able to, but just a salt of the earth, could not be a nicer human being. I am a huge Charles Davis fan. So much as so, quick story, we talked for about half an hour. He had to go to do a radio show. And then I told him, I said, hey, love to keep, chatting it up. So he's like, yeah, for sure. Let's get together.
We're going to bring him on the show.
So yeah, that'd be awesome. We need to hit him up because he is a wealth of knowledge. And so my son walked out on the field. They're going to get some autographs after this private session. And, just not autographs, just pictures with the players.
Yeah.
And my son said, hey, can I get my picture with you? And he said, you talked to my dad earlier. And so he points, he says, who's your dad? He points up to me in the stands. I'm at the far end of the stadium. I wave. He is such a class act. He's on the field, right? Like if I'm going to get a picture or whatever with Braden, then I should walk down it. Right. He walked up into the stands
cool.
to come see me, right? Which
that's really cool.
To me, because
he didn't have to do that.
Like why? Why would he have to do it? So again, Charles Davis, great guy. I mean, and I think it's really neat that he is that voice of the game, and the kids kids were repeating things that he says in the game.
I was going to say,
which is really funny.
What would have been really cool is if Braden would have had him do like a personal recording for him.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
good idea.
If I'd have been there, I'd have been like, hey, Braden, have him do a little call, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
And then have it as like a ringtone or something.
Sweet, because you know what? I'm telling you, and he's got such a distinctive voice too.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is he's a football guy. He was there watching the kids, just loving it, just knowing that these guys have a great opportunity. And so, that's my first experience. We've had numerous kids over the years go to the Manning camp, and that is the one camp that I've been told over and over by people is like, hey, if you're going to go to a non-college camp, you got to go to Thibodaux. You got to get down there. You got to experience it. And neat town, neat place.
So how many kids were there all together?
13, around 1,300, and I believe about 1,000 are quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then they run basically eighth is when you start, but there was definitely some seventh graders there for sure. Seventh, eighth, and then ninth kind of on one field, and then they have not one field. It was 30 plus fields of quarterbacks, and then there's the receivers, running backs, and tight ends. They're somewhere else. But the format is awesome. There's interaction with the players. You get to watch them compete. You get to watch them train. They're there with you talking. And then there's other coaches that are kind of spattered around, like high school coaches around the country that help operate it. And then what I think is neat is a lot of those guys have been there, 8, 9, 10, 15 years. This is, I believe the 29th year of the camp.
So that many kids and guys still get reps and.
Oh, yeah. Because what they do is they break you down into groups of, I believe, 10.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're just rotating and doing different drills. So Braden had numerous times. He had a guy who's I'll forget his first name, last name Kilgore. He's quarterback coach with the Broncos.
Okay, yeah.
So guys like that, and so and then you got guys like Garrett Green, West Virginia's quarterback, running drills, and Riley Leonard from Duke running drills, and just
what an experience for those guys. Yeah,
if you're a kid and you there was numerous pictures of kids like he would send me they took with guys that I have no, and then he's like, oh, that's Carson Beck. Well, yeah, I've seen Carson Beck play quite a bit.
Yeah,
he's a hell of a quarterback. But yeah, so then Brady Cook's there, well represented. Drew Pine, his backup from Notre Dame, was there as well. He can spin it, man. I can see that kid being a 2-year starter when Brady's gone, for sure.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent. And really good arm, really good demeanor. Missouri was well represented. I'll just put it that way when it came time. And it was interesting when they did the challenge. There was a pretty good reaction out of the stand when they announced Brady Cook, University of Missouri, right? So,
yeah.
And of course, when they announced Jalen Milroe, everybody goes crazy because it's Alabama.
Right.
Nussmeier from LSU was a big fan favorite because he's right there. I think maybe Baton Rouge is an hour away, so just a little bit north of there. So, but yeah, pretty neat. Really,
what a windfall for that town to have that camp there.
$15 million is what's generated.
Yeah, that's immediately where my mind went.
And it just you just see that everybody in the town, and it is, we don't have to talk that much more about it. But what's cool is when you get there, you check in.
Yeah. And
when I knew it was going to be a good experience, it was hot, right? And so we got there right when you're supposed to check in. It's like 11 to 4 check in, right? So we're newbies, so we're there early, and we're waiting in line, and they come, traipsing through with a big cart full of ice with water in it, right? Because they know people are there, they'll be hot, and they were just, they came through numerous times. They've given people water, and then you go into this exhibition hall, if you will, across at the Student Union, and then there's a local welcoming party, if you will, and it's there's a Cajun or Creole band playing in the corner.
Oh, cool.
And there's alligators and swamp boat tours.
Bobby Boucher.
Yeah, every you want to try out some Cajun pasta. Do you want to do red beans and rice and jambalaya? It was really neat.
That's really cool.
And so and all the whole town comes out and supports it. So it's fun to see and be a part of something like that. And Nicholls State, great facilities, lots
really
of,
is underrated program.
Yeah,
yep.
Really nice. So again, not really an advertisement for it, but if you have a son that's a quarterback and you're looking for a neat experience.
And you were throwing out names of guys, not just from St. Louis, but from the state.
Oh yeah. There's guys from all over. There was
Missouri was well represented.
There's kids from Springfield, kids from up north. And the thing is too, that's
is the Jeff City kid? Was that somebody I would know?
He's younger.
Okay. Would you happen to train him?
No, he actually is a hilarious young man. He has done some stuff with us in the past when he was younger.
Because I know I was thinking of the guy who I know.
Yeah, no, he was not there.
He wasn't there.
But then what I would say is it's just a good experience, but you probably shouldn't do it if you're a new quarterback or you're not to the level of where you need to be. You probably shouldn't do it just for the experience, only because there's so much throwing. If your mechanics are not sound,
yeah,
it's not like a technique heavy camp. It is a drill intensive camp, right? So they're working on RPOs, decision making. They're working on 5-step drop with a hitch, 5-step drop with no hitch. Play actions. He did so much play action, it wasn't even funny. So a lot of that. So if you're not, if you're not really up to that skill level yet, then
Mhm.
it's probably a lot, to be honest with you. And there was a certain number of boys that I saw struggle for sure.
Yeah.
And, knowing what I know and what I do on a daily basis,
How badly did you want to run down there and like
it's pretty
help
easy,
them out?
to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're looking like it's obvious to see, like on a field of like, say 100 kids.
It's hard not to try to want to.
It's very obvious to see who's
Yeah.
who, though, real quick. I mean, there was a couple studs on the field that I was watching. It was fun to see.
Just kind of locked onto them.
Yeah, fun to see.
It's really cool. And what's interesting is to go back to what you were talking about, like the quarterbacks 5'9" to 6 foot that were doing it really well and really ripping it. Who comes to mind is Carson Boyd, who
Yep.
I feel probably hasn't gotten the respect that he deserves, as talented as he is. He's one of those guys.
Yep.
I mean, he's just with everything that he can really rip it. He has a strong arm, the quick release, the ball.
Smooth.
He's one of the smoothest players that I've actually seen.
He would be an excellent guy 2 years into his career to be a counselor at that.
Yes.
Because they're looking for class acts. Now, the other thing I think is cool, and you can read, there's an article in the Post where Brady Cook got interviewed. Oddly enough, I was standing there with him when he was getting interviewed by, I didn't realize it was the Post. But,
Yeah.
he was just giving insight in how it works and what they're doing. But the Mannings class acts. So they say that Archie will text every one of those guys that were counselors after their games and talk to them about their games.
That's
So they're
bad.
watching. It's
Wow.
like a family type deal. I mean, it is, Archie's a legend, right?
Right.
Peyton's a legend. So is Eli. And then to see, Cooper, their son, who didn't get to play, but is Arch Manning's dad.
Yeah.
I also thought it was neat.
Now, how was Arch look?
Good.
Really?
Yeah, he did not do the skills training or the skills component for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But when he did the private throwing, I got a few clips of him. He was ripping it. I mean,
Yeah.
he looks polished.
So-
Not perfect, but polished.
So do you think he's ready? He's ready to.
Yeah, I think as soon as Quinn Ewers was there,
Right.
he's a dude.
Oh yeah.
He is a dude.
So compare the two.
You could just tell Quinn's a little bit more polished as
Okay.
far as like done it longer. But
Because I know the big talk was, is Arch going to stick around?
I'm telling you, from watching how that family operates, it's very systematic, and they're okay with him getting better and learning under that. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like sometimes it's okay to wait. Sometimes it's,
Very true.
patience is really good. And it's like the old marshmallow study where they had the kids, they tracked them for years, and they gave kids marshmallows. They said, hey, you can eat this one right now, or if you wait, I'll give you another one and you'll have two.
Okay.
Right. And they tracked, I guess they watched these people throughout their lives, and the people that had the patience made more money. The people that had patience, got better jobs, better,
So it
more
wasn't about
stable.
It wasn't about instant gratification,
Self-control.
which is really what we see a lot of, whether it's been in college football with the transfer portal now. If you don't get that instant gratification, if you don't get, that you have that sense of entitlement, if I'm not the guy right now, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Right. And you see it in high school with guys and transferring all over the place, locally, here and just and around the state. But it's really, really something to watch. And that's great. And I imagine, the support system that Arch has is what's kept him there.
Yeah.
Because, he could have went any place. He could have just bolted
Correct.
this year.
Yeah. And anybody would love to have had him and he'd go start somewhere. But I think he roomed with Brady Cook.
Oh,
and
nice.
Brady said, awesome guy. And, to me, I like to read into things. I'm like, that's a pretty good sign when they have, Arch Manning is rooming with Brady Cook. And I think Garrett Green, and I forgot who the other person was. So pretty tight crew of guys.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, that's a sign of respect, right? Like that's a good thing. And so
it's great. It's great to see Brady get the respect that he deserves now.
Mm-hmm. He's a class act.
He really
the
is.
Kids, like you could see kids love being around him. But he's
a good ambassador for the University of Missouri.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if people realize that.
Oh yeah. I had numerous conversations with people that were very high on him, and at a guy. He's like, if I'm buying stock, I'm buying stock in him. Couple about a month ago at Lindenwood, I had a guy that was a former NFL quarterback who spent a week at Mizzou. He spent a week at maybe Kentucky, a week at Penn State, and somewhere else where they have a bunch of really good quarterbacks. And he said, in his mind, of the best quarterbacks, he said Cook is the one he had put his money on for like a long-term 10-year NFL career.
Oh, said. Absolutely. And the great thing about Brady, and that you've noticed, or like with what I do, he's constantly on that upward trajectory, right? And that's what I look for in guys. And I can tell Brady hasn't even hit his best football yet.
Nope.
He still has a nice ceiling and the potential to reach. And so, yeah, I mean, he's going to be one of those dudes. That's just it. Carson's going to be one of those dudes.
Yes.
And I'm seeing people, everybody who has the internet is throwing out rankings on guys, these days and everything. Yeah. And I'm seeing Carson. I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is a guy who's probably going to be a 3-year starter in the Big Ten, because he's that good.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, anything can happen, but in my opinion, he's good enough to do that.
100%. And
you're the guy that drives things. I mean, you have to when you evaluate, if you're going to rank, you have to go by importance of position.
Well, and that's the thing is you see all these rankings and stuff. So we just had some kids this morning. We went out to First Form and with our good friend Evan Johnson, who we had on the show.
Yeah.
And went out and had a workout. There was a young man, JD Gillum, who's in town, who's a quarterback from Knoxville, Tennessee. So he was in. We had some boys go out there, and it was interesting. We got done, and they were talking about someone put out rankings about 2025 quarterbacks, no particular order type of scenario. And there were some names left off, and it's interesting. The kids that train with the guys that are dudes, are like, why? How in the world could you leave Baruch Johnson off of there? How how? But the problem is, and this is no disrespect to anybody doing those lists.
I'll disrespect
their viewpoint. Sometime is not as wide because they don't see everything, right? So they're going to go to different things and different events. Where you're at training environments, you see the training. It's very easy to see who's doing what and what their trajectory is and what they're building towards, right?
Right.
And so when you don't see that and you kind of just look at stat lines and what people did last year.
They look at stat lines and they look at huddle film. That's
problematic.
That is
very problematic. So, but yeah, I think, that this 2025 class is special, quarterback-wise in particular.
Coming up on a year, we talked about that.
Yeah, I think we kind of
one of the first.
We were right on the bullseye with that one, right? But you can see it, and you can see how well the guys behave, and how dedicated they are to training and getting better. But yeah, let's put it this way: if our class of 2025 group showed down at that Manning Academy all together, it would have been the best group of collections from any state that would have been there.
Without a doubt. And it was the rankings thing. I always say they don't know what they don't know, and there's a lot of guys that don't know. That God love the internet. Anybody can put anything that they want out there, and unfortunately, sometimes kids, take it to heart when they shouldn't.
That you beat me to it. Just don't take it to heart. Take it, use it for what it is. It's almost like, rival star rankings. Like you can't, you cannot get too high or low on any of that. Because at the end of the day, there's dudes there that. This past weekend that are living their dream that were not highly rated, right? And there's guys that overcame all kinds of odds, and at the end of the day, like they're in a better position because they just didn't give up and they didn't buy into the BS, right? And it is easy to get distracted. It's easy to get down and say, "Oh, I shouldn't. Maybe I just give up." But if you keep working at it and you keep having a plan to develop yourself. And get around people that can help you, the sky's the limit. And unfortunately, back to that guy that was like, well, I would train more if I was a starter. I mean,
give it to me and I'll do something.
Yeah. I mean, that is, I mean, as a coach, you hear
that. It had to blow your mind.
It just blows your mind. And unfortunately, I think that individual is not alone in his thinking.
Yeah.
I would work harder if I had more money.
Right.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
well, you hear it all the time from
Yeah.
guys, how good they are, how good they could be, but they're not given this opportunity, or this isn't happening, or like you said, they're not made the starter. They're not able. If you made me the starter, I'll show you how good I was.
Well, it's like
Well, it
Uncle
doesn't work. It
Rico.
doesn't. Right. It doesn't work like that.
Coach would have put me in.
Right.
Things have
Could
been
have been all
different.
state. Right.
Could have been all state.
Could have been all
right?
state, man. And
Like-
you know, talking about the Missouri 2025 quarterbacks, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and you see them quite a bit. You know exactly what I'm going to say, but North Dakota State is going to have a hard time keeping Mr. Brown for 4 years. And
Mhm.
you know exactly what I'm talking about. He is so talented and still working to.
He's an outlier.
He really is. And I really think it kind of boils down to where he's at, right? What high school he's at. And that's the only thing, because he's gone on the national stage to Elite 11 and this and that, and
And I-
tested as the like number one guy.
Yeah, and I still don't believe, and this is no knock on their competition, but I
Mhm.
still don't believe that there's a true evaluation. They would probably argue that, but what I would say is, I've seen kids win the accuracy challenge. This is years ago, win the
Mhm.
accuracy challenge, the golden arm, or what they used to call it.
Yeah.
And then they win it, and there's nothing. Like they don't get. They don't move on to the next one. They win the golden arm challenge and whatever the other challenge they had, and it was already decided kind of who that guy was.
There you
And
go.
So,
Bingo.
and so the problem is it's very difficult when you see that, because there's people involved that have their guys that are in the system, and they probably have a say in a vote,
Yep.
right? And so, but they do. I will say, by and large, they have the best operation as far as consistency of product and what they've done over the years.
Right.
So
I've just always felt that it's predetermined who's going to be the guy.
there are. I would argue.
I
that
think
that's
there's a lot
probably
of
true.
politics. Yeah, there's a lot of politics in various camps and things such as that. And that's just my personal opinion, that I think that's a lot of guys, because I've seen guys go in there, or like one year you saw Drew Lock go in there and just tear it up, and he wasn't the guy for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And so we see a lot of that.
And then you get outliers like a Blaine Gabbert,
Right.
who's there. You can't deny him because he's 6'5",
Yeah,
220 pounds at the time, and fast,
240 now, right?
and just rips it, right? So, like those guys are really hard to deny. But yeah, I think it's hard when you have that many kids coming to that many events, right? Too, because that's probably why you end up with a little bit more bias and predetermination,
Yeah.
because you don't know. You have a set of guys that you know for sure,
Right. And if there's an unknown who comes in there and
Correct.
tears it
Yeah.
up, it's not going to help you.
and you have no real framework to understand
It's
who
like,
that
what do we
person
do?
really is.
What do we
right?
do with this guy?
Right.
He came out of nowhere. Is he an outlier? Is this?
And that's probably not fair to them too, because
Right.
it is there's so many kids coming in there. But yeah, I think there's so much that goes into it, and not every one of those kids that was there this past week was a high level high school quarterback. They've gotten, a lot of them have gotten better. I mean, like Brady Cook, for instance, in my opinion, was a battler and a hell of a guy that had a high ceiling coming out of high school, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is if you were to look at his number of offers and then maybe what his stat line looked like, you wouldn't see it. But if you looked at, like you do and I do, and you're around these guys and you get to know them, you see the character traits and you see the competitor traits,
The
that they have,
totality of them as a person and a player
and then it makes sense.
over years.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's how I knew Brady was a dude as a freshman. Just
Mhm.
watching him play 7-on-7. I'm like, okay, well, I got to know who he is.
Circle his name.
Yep.
Yeah.
If he keeps on this direction, this trajectory, he's going to be a guy. And he kept on it.
Yep.
And, we're talking about, Brady was like, at the elite combine, I remember like 35-inch vertical,
Mhm.
4.59 laser 40,
Mhm.
as like a sophomore.
And guess what? He's still running that 4.4 range at Mizzou,
Yeah.
which will shock people, right?
Yeah.
Watch him pull away from guys in the SEC,
Oh.
and you go, "Oh, he does run a 4.4."
Right.
So, but hey, switching gears, thinking about kids and commitments as we're talking about 25s.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is there's a lot of kids sitting on the fence right now, waiting to make their decision. Right? if you have a committable offer and you're thinking you're going to wait into your senior season before you start to really weigh and make your hardcore decision. I mean, take a cue from a guy like Corey Sims. He's got a bunch of offers. He pared it down to 3 and made one decision, right? And this time is kind of a good time to do that if you have that FCS, FBS offer, because a lot of those guys are trying to get that stuff solidified. You know, the official visit windows are going right now, or were prior to this dead period. But you have to understand, like those offers, like when we talk about committable, non-committable, you have to, if you have an opportunity to take an offer and you think it's good for you, you take it. Because if you wait on it, there's too many other variables that can occur, and something that kids might not be thinking about. Okay, you think, okay, hey, I'm a wide receiver. They're gonna offer me. They're okay, great. They offer me. They sound like they really like me. They say I'm high on their board, and so I'm committable. And then they're in spring ball, they're in summer ball, and heaven forbid the left tackle gets diagnosed with a heart murmur. Or something like that, and he can't play. Suddenly, they now have to shift their focus from taking an extra receiver, which might have been your spot, to taking an extra tackle, right? And so now you're like, well, wait a second, I had an offer. It can happen that fast. Like there are too many variables, too many things out of your control. What is in your control is committing when it's time to commit, right? And having a sense of urgency with it, not making knee-jerk reactions, but knowing that, hey, time is of the essence, especially between now and September, right? And then there's a lot of kids who have been told, hey, we want to see your first 3 games of your film. And you and I both know that is a stall tactic. That means you're on their board. That means that you're not in an offer state, or they've offered you and it's not committable.
Or there's other dudes.
There's other dudes that they're waiting on. Okay. So, but if those guys mess around, that could be to your benefit. So, staying in contact and being around them and putting up good game film, right? I would suggest going out and in any of these 7-on-7s or your team camps you're doing, you should be filming it and putting that film out. Anything that's good, you need to be putting it out there. Hopefully it's filmed correctly. Sometimes it's hard to see,
especially if you're an underclassman and you're not going to get a lot of reps this year. There's a particular kid that I'm thinking of who's a very good quarterback, right? But he has a high-level D1 quarterback starting in front of him. And I spoke with him at a recent 7-on-7, and I explained to him he needs to be filming every training session that he has. And he needed to be filming that 7-on-7 and any other thing that he can do, because he needs that film, because he's behind the 8 ball, because he's not going to be getting a lot of reps unless there's a lot of blowouts.
Yeah, and then those reps don't look nearly as good as first quarter reps.
Right, exactly. But no, you're absolutely right. Timing is everything with making your commitment. I know Corey just visited Mizzou, last weekend. Me and you talked before all of this, and his USC visit seemed special, right? Because we talked about that, just the vibe and the energy that he had out there and all that. So we weren't really surprised when it was USC and then people that I was talking with. But, you're absolutely right. And I always say this to kids. I'm like, hold your spot, right? If you know and you like this and it's a good fit for you, and that, hold your spot. Because for that very reason that you're talking about. Because things happen, things can change. And first 3 games in, they might go in a different direction. And that happens all the time. You might be on their board, and 3 games in, well, they reshuffle the deck, right? They reshuffle the board. And the whole new wave of guys who they've become aware of that's now on their board, and you're on the outside looking in. And they're not, and then you just quit hearing from them, right? Or you reach out to them and they don't respond.
That's a bad sign.
That's a bad sign.
It's a bad sign.
Yeah, move on.
So, yeah, or, say a staff gets fired, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or something happens, right? There's a incident off the field and a coach gets fired, and now suddenly you're going, well, I was going to commit to these guys,
right.
But now there's a new staff. And then it can catch you the other way. Those guys, something happens and a bunch of guys, a mass exodus of recruits leaves, and those guys now were way higher on the board than you were, and now they're looking for new schools to go to, and you get passed by. So, like, you have to stop thinking in local terms. You have to start thinking in large, like the grand scheme, like
business terms.
Zoom out.
Yep.
Zoom out and think about how it works, right? So then, and the reason why the D2s will start to offer a little bit later. I mean, some are offering earlier, but the reason why they're as soon as FCS guys and FBS guys kind of get their stuff, most of their guys committed. I mean, as we talked about, Wyatt Mueller, he committed to, an FCS.
Smart move.
Point Gregory, right? Carter Burdell. Those guys are all committing right now. They're taking spots, man. They're filling spots up.
Yep.
Now, they commit. Those guys all commit. Something happens their senior year and someone else sniffs them out that's bigger. It's a business.
It is a business.
They won't, that you being committed to that smaller school will not dissuade them in one bit. They don't care. So just as if they won't care if you go there and you're All-American and you put your name in the transfer portal, they have no problem having you come there. So you just have to think of it in the grand scheme of things. And, you can't get the cart in front of the horse. You got to be working through this entire process. You cannot be, just plugging away and thinking recruiting is your full-time job. That's part of the process, but getting in training and developing and becoming a better player, bigger, faster, stronger, all those things are what's going to, make it work for you. And so, there's so many kids trying to get to go where you want to go. What are you going to do to differentiate yourself from the pack? What are you going to do that makes them say, oh, this guy is different? What are you going to make them say that says, oh, this guy reminds me of so-and-so that was a superstar for us? Or what are you going to say, or what are you going to do that's going to make them say, we've already had this experiment. We're going to turn and go the other way. Those are things you got to be thinking about. Like, how are you going to differentiate yourself? It's going to be no different when you go into the job market. If you look like everybody else, you do the same thing as everybody else, you're average.
Got to have marketable skills.
Nobody wants to hire average. I want to hire above average to great. No coach wants to bring in an average player to fill the void, one of 85 spots he has. Okay. He's looking for way above average. He's looking for greatness. And so, yes, they miss on guys all the time. Okay. But that process is going to keep refining down the more money that gets paid to these guys and as players, and the schools have to start kind of chipping in to control and pay for the process. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get the stringent, more tightened up, if you will. So I think players got to really open their eyes to, if you want to play major level football, FCS and above, you got to be the best of the best.
Yeah, what I like this week, which is dead week, I'm seeing a lot of guys out there working independently.
Mm-hmm.
They're focusing on it. Some guys and some other guys are just taking the week off, right? Oh, we get a break. But it's those guys that I see out there that are doing the extra work, working independently, finding a field, even if they're, not going to get trained at a place like Elite, but they're doing something to try to make themselves better. And that really separates you. And other guys you see just they're vacationing, or they're just taking time off, or they're just working their job, part-time job, and doing whatever.
Finding excuses.
But I'm telling you, every little thing that you do between your last game and the start of your season the next year is the difference maker.
I
all
had
building.
A really cool conversation right before the show with a guy who's an industry expert in a different sport. And we were talking about how they analyze athletes. I mean, this guy's industry leader, okay, big time. And we were talking about how they evaluate athletes and things that they do. And we got on the topic of eye training, okay? And he made a comment I thought was really interesting. He was like, it's probably the most overlooked, besides the brain, right? But the eyes are so critical in any sport: basketball, baseball, soccer, football in particular.
Vision. Yeah.
Vision is everything, right? So eyesight and eye acuity and are just so really good, like helping you, ascertain,
not just the hand-eye coordinate,
depth perception,
right?
All that, like convergence, getting things to like line up and a lot of that can be trained, right? So like we start talking about that and kind of some systems that they use to do that. And, as a competitive person myself, then it's like, okay, hey, wait, we need to be looking at this for our athletes. And we need to be looking at this, right? So we had First Form come on here and talk about nutrition and supplementation. All those things are building blocks. Ignoring your eyes and how your eyes work as an athlete, do it at your own peril, right? Because someone else is going to do it. And I think that's the way you kind of got to look at all this stuff. It's like, yeah, you're right. I can take the day off. You're right. But someone else is going to do it otherwise. Right. You own a business, same thing. Oh, you have a job. I could take the day off. That's all right. I'm going to half-ass it today. No, you're right. You can, but when you were in a hyper competitive environment like college football, 6% of the kids, 5.8% of the kids get to play it after high school. That to me is, the paring down makes it so competitive that if you think that you were given that much more God-given ability than other kids, you are out of your mind. Very few times have I seen a guy that was the best kid in high school that was just the very best kid in college without working at it, right?
Yep.
At some point they have to catch on. And there was guys, yeah, sure, better than Tom Brady coming out of high school. I'm sure there was guys better than him in college when he got there. At the end of the day, his mentality overcame all of that and he became the greatest, right? And that's because if you hear him talk, attention to detail. I'll go back to Peyton Manning. One of the questions was asked to him in this symposium, and they said, what are some things you did? And he said, well, I watched a lot of game film on the other teams. He's like, but do you know what I probably watched more film of? My mechanics. I watched myself throwing the ball and I watched my play fakes. So I filmed from the front and I watched what it looked like to the defense. And I was making sure that I was not shortchanging myself and my team on my play fakes. Okay. And when you talk about Peyton Manning's game, it's about how great his play action was, right? His audibles and his play action. And then you trace back and you listen to him talk about it. Well, do you think he figured all that out by doing it a couple of times and just got good at it? No, he did it throughout his entire career. He was filming himself to make sure he was not shortchanging himself. And I think that is a critical component to everything that we're talking about. Like, you think you're doing enough, I got news for you. None of us are. But if you do a little bit more each day, your opportunity is going to get better and better and better. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that think just doing, the bare minimum is going to get them by, and it's just not the case. So, a story like Manning, a guy like that who was a, perennial All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, the ability for him to do that and get better and better over time speaks volumes to the process of getting better, and it's doing the little things over and over and over that other people just don't want to do.
And what's interesting is that it's easier for kids now than even when he was coming up to get better. They have more resources. They can videotape themselves. He probably had to set up an old school camera.
Oh yeah,
and all that. So I mean, the opportunity is there for people. So to not take it, as opposed to back when he was young and coming up.
Oh, brutal.
He
had to
figure it out for himself. You
Correct.
got guys like you and others, trainers who tell you what you need to do. Make it easy for you.
Make it real easy.
Yeah. So what's next? What's coming up on the agenda? No more camps. Anything on the horizon?
We have a middle school camp July 8th through the 12th at Chaminade. We've run that one there for years.
Mm-hmm.
We got that. We'll be testing more high school teams on the force plates. That'll be pretty interesting to see kind of where they're at. We have a new program at our facility, the universal speed rating, which is like we can rate athletes versus the other kids across the country. So it's pretty neat for the kids. It's kind of gamified so they can see where they stack up versus the other kids in their area, which is really, really good. It shows how fast they can run, over a 40-yard distance, top miles per hour, all that. So really cool to see. I think it's something that I think athletes, if you don't enjoy being tested and see where you fit, then, being a high school player and having fun is just probably the path you need to take. if you're a guy that wants to strive to be the best you can be, doesn't mean you need to be number one, but you're not satisfied being whatever number you are. I think those are the guys we're looking to see. So, yeah, we'll be training the rest of the summer. We got training Wednesday night. We got training Sunday. The way the holiday fell, we're gonna go the 3rd and the 7th, and the reason being is we got work to do. We got guys that want to get better. So yeah, you're right.
You see it. You see it.
Yeah.
You see who's coming in.
Yep.
To get better. A lot of guys take time off. It's the summertime, whatever. But the guys who are there, I make extra note of who shows up
100%
and trains on a Wednesday or a Sunday, or any time or wherever they're training at. I make special note of that because it's important. It's everything. It's all part of the puzzle that makes the picture.
Hey, and remember, there's a right way to train. There's a wrong way to train. If you're working with a guy that is training 4 and 5 different position groups, run for the hills. Just stop. Watch a YouTube video. You're better off, because if somebody thinks they're an expert in that many levels of the game, they're either very young and naive, or they're trying to just get your money. Because at the end of the day, people are experts in multiple things, and very few people are experts in mathematics, physics, and drawing, art,
cooking.
Cooking. Like quarterback play is different than defensive line play. Defensive line play is different than linebacker play.
Or like when I came into the studio, producer Joe was playing an actor who is now this world famous mathematician and scientist. It's a reach.
Oh, yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's it. So yeah, I mean, starting next week, it all fires back up. Everybody's going to be back out there in on the high school level. The calm before the storm is over. Everybody's going to be back to the lifting and doing joint camps and joint practices and stuff like that. So it's all going to be fired up. It's going to come quick. It's hard to believe. I almost feel like summer's over since we're in July.
I know,
because it's going to hit. It's going to hit quick.
I know the feeling.
It's like where'd it go? So, but. Yeah, great as always. More fun. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. Fastest hour of football talk on the planet. Football 360 Show. You can go ahead and catch everything Football 360, football360show.com, and as well as on X. And where else are we at?
Send us questions.
Instagram. Yeah, you know what? Questions. That's what I forgot to do is do the whole send us questions thing today.
And share, and subscribe. That to me is the best thing you can do, because we have a pretty wide variety of people listening. And we get a lot of people that are from around the state and around the Midwest that are listening. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. And but if we can make it, there's
feedback.
There's not going to be any questions you're going to ask us that are going to make us, take pause. Just give us your answer, and we'll give you the best. Give us the best question. We'll give you the best answer we got. So,
of course, there's all our socials and website and good stuff. Producer Joe puts up there on the screen beautiful graphics for you right there. So we don't even need to say it.
That's it,
do we? And that'll do it. So everybody, stay safe, stay cool, and we will talk to you next week.